Good afternoon, everybody. It's wonderful to be back here. These conferences for me are so valuable, and that's because we get to tap real expertise, and we've got two experts with us today. Now, you don't need me to tell you that business aircraft don't just grow economies, they save lives, and in many respects, that's something I wish we could have conveyed more effectively to the protesters outside this morning. Perhaps if they were more aware of the life-saving role of these aircraft, they'd have a different view of us, but that's probably for another day. We're here to talk about the aeromedical fleet and how they're operated and how that sector is changing. Our two experts join us, as it happens, both from Germany. So on the right side of the sofa, we have Milena Schutte. She is a highly experienced air traffic service manager. She has a great background in charter operations, and now she's applying her expertise to organizing medical repatriation operations for international SOS and MedAire, of course. And that means cooperating daily with operators all around Europe and beyond. And Milena is really in the front lines of making this life-saving operation happen. So we're grateful she's joining us today. Next to me is Dr. Oliver Kosing from a German company called Aero-Dienst. You possibly, like me, know them as aeronautical engineers. They convert aircraft, they maintain aircraft, but of course they also operate aircraft. And this is where Oliver comes in. He is the managing director of the company. And we're going to hear from him as to how these aircraft are deployed effectively when it comes to repatriating people. So let's start with a somewhat general question. In what way is this sector, Oliver, that you operate in changing? What sort of new challenges do you face, or what new opportunities do you have? And then I'll ask you a very similar question, Milena, if I may.
Charles, thank you very much. Yes. So first of all, I would like to share some numbers with you. So Aero-Dienst is a 100% daughter company of the German ADAC, which is automobile clubs, the second largest in the world, with 22 million members. And every year we deal with 40,000 medical cases that ranges from broken finger to a severe heart attack. Of those 40,000 cases, 10,000 are brought back home to Germany by road transport, 2,500 by air transport, commercial airliners. If you have a broken arm, you wouldn't need an ambulance jet. You simply get a ticket on a commercial airliner. And 1,100 to 1,200 patients we bring back with our air ambulance fleet. Right. So for us, the most important factor is reliability of our fleet. And this is obviously a concern to us because parts availability, as we have heard this morning or yesterday, is becoming a real issue. Yes. And also the talent, the people who are maintaining the aircrafts. However, that one, we have a quite loyal workforce in Nuremberg. We are pretty well off there, but parts is really an issue. On the other hand side, there's also opportunities. This is a growing market, and this is something which we want to participate in. People getting older, and still they have wishes to travel, and they travel to faraway places. That means there's a growing patient base, and we see a growing market here.
That's very clear. Thank you, Oliver. Milena, from where you sit, working with operators, do you see much change in terms of what is asked of you and the ways that you have to do your job, basically?
Well, this is actually related to the region we're operating, because the majority of our flights are mainly in remote locations. So that means the challenges we have is that permits are a big issue, especially with the increasing crisis areas we have worldwide. We're also facing a security issue. So this triangle actually is quite hard to treat on, but we also see opportunities in the market because the air ambulances have a strong moral backing, which means that we are still having a high demand because, especially after the pandemic, there is globally a high risk in health issues. So for the future, we do see that the demand is increasing because...
So as Oliver said, people still traveling, still facing health risks.
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. Just to pick up on one thing, you mentioned a security element to what would you do. Do you mean that in some cases you're having to go and collect people from areas that may not be completely safe?
Yes, that happens because, again, the majority of our movements are not necessary within Europe. They are mostly in remote locations or even in the crisis regions. So, yes, we need to do a daily assessment. We rely on the security assessments of our third-party partners. And it can happen that we need to delay or even cancel a mission because of the current situation on site.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Oliver, you mentioned that demand for your service is increasing. You have an established fleet, but I believe you're also in the process of refreshing your fleet, perhaps changing it. Tell us about what you've achieved so far and what might be coming next in this respect.
Yeah, exactly. We want to stay ahead of the wave before our fleet becomes too old and too unreliable. We are currently in the process to replace the fleet. Next year we will add another Challenger. 650 to our fleet, and we are in the process this year to decide how to replace the rest of the fleet till 2030. So there will be 3 more aircrafts coming in the following years. And as I said, reliability is a key issue for us. We obviously look at the costs of the aircraft. We look at the suitability for our medical purposes. It should suit the doctors. They should be able to work in the aircrafts properly. That's also a key issue for us, and that's one of the reasons why we investigate this quite thoroughly.
Absolutely. So you have to get the right balance between the range and the payload and the reliability and so on to make sure every flight will happen.
Exactly. You mentioned range. This is of utmost importance for us because we see that the members of the ADAC, they, as I said, they like to travel, and the cruises, holidays on cruise ships is becoming more and more popular. They go to faraway places like the Caribbean. They become sick there, and we have to bring them back. And doing that in a Learjet, you can do that, but that's quite cumbersome.
Yeah, good point. Milena, you're really in the front line. You work with operators all the time. I would imagine you have to have really good communications and relationships with them. Generally speaking, when you try to find operators who can help you complete your mission, what are you looking for? What makes a really good operator in this aeromedical sector?
So yeah, MedAire and International SOS as a group, we have a very strict credentialing process. But we have a lot of experts in-house from either medical perspective and operational perspective. Yeah, as for myself, I have a strong aviation background.
Bring the mic up a bit.
Sorry. Okay. And so what we look for in a new partner, because we intend to say they are all partners, not operators or providers, we build up a very strong relationship. And we do have high requirements, such as the insurances for aircraft and the medical crew needs to be appropriate. We do medical assessments with our internal doctors who actually check our partners on site. Same for the operation. We're going through a test phase to fulfill all the measures we have in-house. We require a third-party accreditation, such as URAMI or NAMTA CAMS. What very is important is the communication. We need a transparent and reliable communication because, again, lots of our colleagues at MedAire and International SOS, they have an aviation background. So we know what's going on and what's challenging on the other side. So we need to have a clear communication, cooperative, to say what we can do and also what we can't do. And to find the right solution together in a collaboration.
Absolutely. So in that respect is what happens in the cabin with the medical staff. Of course, it has to be focused, but it can't happen without the cooperation of the flight crew. And I would imagine some flight crew possibly are more sensitive about that than others if they don't have experience in this type of flight, maybe.
Yeah, again, we have a very strong network and we build up our relationship over many years and we're in very close communication and we take care and we improve the services on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Oliver, you mainly provide your flights, as I understand it, for ADEC, the Automobile Association, so there must be a lot of consistency in what you do. But how do you view that crucial relationship between the medical support team that you're carrying and your flight crew? Do you find that's a good partnership? And do you have to work at that and not just assume it will be okay?
Certainly, this is of highest importance. We have also a network of 80+ doctors which work for us. They stem from the clinic in Erlangen. We have collaboration with the pediatric clinic in Nuremberg. Those doctors are specially trained. They are internists, anesthetists with special training in air ambulance. And we also hold twice a year a congress at our premises. We take 2 aircrafts out of operation, so the medical crew can train and practice in our aircraft. And obviously the crew is there as well, so they have to interact, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. And are you responsible for dispatching the flights, or is that handled externally by ADEC?
No, that is done by us. We have a dispatch crew which is planning the flights, scheduling the flights, arranging accommodation for the crew. That's done by us. ADAC, the doctors of the ADAC, they have 50+ full-time employed medical doctors which do the pre-examination of the patients. So remember, we have 40,000 medical inquiries and cases. So they do the assessment of the patients, and then when that is done and the patient is ready to fly, they give the task to us, and we dispatch and plan the flight.
Yeah, very good. Milena, from your point of view, perhaps you can describe to us a bit more about your job. So you're at work and a request comes in, and it might be for a very, very urgent repatriation, a very, very serious medical condition. It could be something more mundane. Somebody's broken a leg skiing, but perhaps they can wait a while. What happens at your end? What do you start doing when these requests come in?
So yeah, but before it comes to me, a medical assessment has been done by our team. So if they say there's a requirement for this movement, then yes, it comes to us and my team. And then we're looking within our network who's the most appropriate provider or partner who has the availability, and maybe there is a special team required, such as if you have a pediatric case or you need an ECMO team, which needs definitely more preparation for such a movement, and it always depends on where is the patient. Is it in a common area where it's easy to get, or is it in a very remote location? So the team and myself, we are looking for the best option, which is most suitable, and we do this very close with our internal medical team. And then we involve the medical team from the air ambulance as well, and then we're having a big discussion how we can find the best way to move this patient.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe no 2 flights are exactly the same, because there are no 2 patients.
Every single flight is different.
Never.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, we know that aviation technology is always moving. It's always changing. I know nothing about medical technology, but I imagine it also changes. Is that reflected in the type of equipment that goes into an aircraft? Is there much change in what is considered necessary and how it has to be provided?
Yes, certainly. We want to try to stay on top of that development. Like you just said, we also fly with ECMOs and with incubators. We try to always be equipped with the most modern medical stuff. So, for example, our fleet is now getting the latest and newest versions of ultrasonic scanners, very slim devices that will replace the old ones. And it's a constant battle to stay ahead of the game and have the latest equipment on the aircrafts.
That's interesting. Have you seen much change yourself, Milena?
Yeah, especially after COVID, we noticed that the complexity of the medical cases increased significantly. So we do need high flexibility and appropriate and specialized equipment from our partners.
Yeah.
That's something which we learned during COVID as well. We did Bergamo flights, and we had to implement quite tough procedures and measures on infectious protection, and we see now also an increase in multi-resistant germs. So we have all of our aircrafts equipped with medical curtains to seal off the patients, and obviously to implement our strict procedures.
That's interesting. I mean, obviously, we all hope that we will never be in a situation like COVID again, but do you think if there ever was a pandemic, as an industry, we'd be better prepared? We'd have perhaps be more ready to adjust to it if something similar happened?
I would say yes, because everybody learned. And, it was a steep learning curve which we had during COVID.
Yes, true. Milena, do you think so? I mean, if we had something like a pandemic, would we do things differently, possibly?
Yeah, I definitely align with Oliver, because it was a big learning process. And even though in the beginning of the pandemic we were trying to implement such as isolation units and stuff like this, but it still took a long time until they were certified. So this is definitely something we would be prepared for.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. A lot of what you're describing are relatively medium and longer haul flights that can only be done in today's jets, basically. But of course, helicopters are also used in different contexts. Good, we've got some questions that we can come to. But do you see any scope for new aircraft, some of the new electric and hybrid electric aircraft that can operate in some cases almost like helicopters, or at least on very short landing sites? Do you think that could be a way that this market will change?
Yeah, very good question. Yes, certainly. We are not in the helicopter business. That's done by our sister company, the ADAC Luftrettung. They operate the yellow helicopters. So they have cooperations with eVTOL companies, but we are collaborating with a Munich startup developing an all-electric fixed-wing aircraft. They are called Viridian. And that is for us of particular interest, because we want to extend our range further down. As I said, there's a lot of road transport going on, and even over longer distances, 300, 400, 500 kilometers, which is too short for a big jet. And when those electrical jets are ready, or electrical aircrafts are ready, we want to purchase these and implement them on those shorter routes.
Excellent. Can you imagine a day where you're dispatching hundreds of eVTOL aircraft, electric aircraft, to get even closer to a medical situation?
Well, in general, just coming back to helicopters, this is not our driving work. But talking about eVTOLs, yeah, it's an interesting concept, but I think it's not developed yet, especially with the regulations we have in ambulances, thinking of stretcher systems, oxygen. It's interesting, but at this stage, not a solution, but it will be, for sure, in some way in the near future.
Good, okay. So one of the questions we've just got, Oliver, we could probably start with you. Do you think OEMs, do you think aircraft manufacturers will ever consider building purpose-built aircraft? In other words, they start their life already as a medical aircraft, or is it perhaps better to simply buy an existing type of airframe and adapt it as you want? And what's the relationship with manufacturers like in that respect?
Yeah, currently, actually, that is the case. We purchase normal business jets and convert them into medical aircrafts. That involves a lot of engineering, and we have partners who help us with the equipment. So, for example, the Challenger, this is something where we put in a lot of engineering, and in the next couple of days, we will deselect our suppliers who equip us with the medical equipment, and or select them, and then the implementation phase begins once the aircraft is delivered. It will be delivered as a VIP aircraft. We take out the VIP cabin and put in our medical stretchers. But on the other hand side, we see, for example, MedAire, they are offering now the Phantom 300 already with medical equipment that could be of interest for us as well, because then we would save on the retrofitting of the aircraft.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a good point there. Just one question here, just to clarify how this works. You did touch on this, Milena, but how do the requests come in? I mean, do they come to you from the insurance companies? Do they come to you from a hospital? How does this process originate?
Well, we have quite a lot of different clients, and the majority is not leisure travel, it's business travel. And the companies are sending their people outside as experts or on duty businesses. They need to take care of the duty of care. I'm sorry. And if they have any issues worldwide and they are not speaking the languages on site, or they don't know where to go, they can call us, and they get support. And as we have colleagues all over the world who speaks different languages, they are speaking with the local facilities, for example, if they're in a hospital or even in a hotel and they're not feeling good, our doctors come into place. They start a conversation. And this comes at the end so far, in case there is any evacuation needed, then our assistance centers will come to us and ask for support to find the right solution.
Right, okay, that's much clearer. People are really fascinated, Oliver, by how you choose aircraft, how you equip them. Somebody's asking here, does it make more sense to buy a pre-owned aircraft and adapt it to what you want, or is it better to get it new and have it exactly how you want from the start? And then somebody else is asking about, emergency medical kit. How long does it last? Is it very expensive?
So first of all, usually in the air ambulance sector, the aircrafts are second life aircrafts, but we at ADAC, we prefer brand new aircrafts because we want to use them for a long period of time. We need highest reliability. So our business case ranges from 10 to 15 years for an aircraft. And that's why we rather choose either very, very young second life aircrafts or brand new aircrafts. And concerning the medical equipment, the stretchers...
is it very costly?
Yes,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Yeah. And we choose quite durable medical equipment. It should last as long as the aircraft. And so far we have been very lucky with it. That the equipment we are using is of highest quality and is very suitable for our needs. We fly with multi-role missions where we use up to 4 to 6 stretchers in one aircraft because we have such a large patient base, and all of those stretchers, or half of those stretchers, are intensive care stretchers, and the other ones are non-intensive care stretchers. So we can fly a mixture of different patients in our aircrafts. And that makes the equipment, especially the intensive care stretchers, quite expensive.
Sure, certainly. Milena, earlier you told me you're based in Frankfurt, but it really doesn't matter where you're based. You're organizing flights in Europe and in parts of Africa. So in terms of how much choice do you have in these regions of the operators? Are there enough aircraft? Is there enough capacity? And does that change as you go from region to region? And how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so we're a team covering actually the world, but each of us has a specific part, and I'll take care of the European and West African part. I would say in this area, the market is saturated. We have a good and great network with sufficient aircrafts we can use for this region. But we see that there's still a need in Asia and particularly in the Middle East. But of course, for the Middle East, you need to consider that most of the crisis regions we have at the moment are in this part of the world.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. This is a fascinating question. Have you ever had to reject a medical evacuation request because of legal restrictions around a patient's condition? Maybe somebody had a gunshot wound or something like that. I mean, I guess the question is it your choice whether a flight goes ahead? I mean, ultimately, do you decide, yes, we can do this, I'm sorry, for whatever reason, this isn't going to be possible?
Certainly, we have a medical director, and he has the ultimate decision whether we take a patient or not. So it makes no sense to bring somebody on the aircraft who's likely to die.
Yeah.
So he has to be stable to survive the flight. And I would say we are doing a very, very good job on that. Since 10 years, we had no deaths on one of our aircrafts. So it's an ultimate choice of our medical director whether we take somebody or not, and it's not an issue whether he has a gunshot wound or something else.
Yeah, you do what's safe
do
and
what's
what's medically safe
medically
and,
makes sense, yeah.
aviation safe too. Okay, and because he mentioned gunshots, it reminded me of something you said when we spoke on the phone. You said in some cases you have helped to evacuate soldiers from the conflict in Ukraine. I think, Milena, you said your company has also been involved in that way. Tell us a little bit about these exceptional situations when you're almost a sort of humanitarian relief operation, you could say.
Yes, not only soldiers which we bring back from the border of Ukraine, it's also a lot of, sadly, infants and premature babies. And we have a very good relationship with the federal agency who is responsible for tasking those flights, and they simply asked us to bring those patients from Czechów, which is right at the border, back to Cologne. It's normally the hospital that takes those patients.
Have you been involved in cases like that yourself?
Yeah, those movements are basically under the government umbrella, and we do have quite a high number of those movements, not just for the Ukrainian soldiers or civilians, but also for people from Gaza who have serious accidents. And yes, we do have quite a high number of governmental movements.
Interesting. That ties in with the question that we've got here. In these exceptional situations, how do you stay on top of, is the airspace open? Maybe your insurance company isn't happy you're going somewhere. I mean, presumably, well, I'll ask both of you this, you have to look at each case and assess everything. That must be quite a headache sometimes, I would think.
Yes, certainly. So it's not only a topic of the condition of the patient, but also of the topic of where he resides. So, for example, currently we won't fly to Russia. That's no issue for us.
And Milena, have you seen complex decisions like this?
Definitely, and this is also the time when we have, again, a very close communication with our partners, because the situation on site can change rapidly, so even within an hour. And constant security assessments needs to be done. And then we hope to find someone or a slot where we are able to pick up the patient.
That's interesting. Is it fair to say, I mean, everything that you're telling me suggests to me that most of these flights would only really work with a business aircraft, well, with a business aviation operation, that there just wouldn't be the flexibility to conduct these flights using the airlines. So is it true to say that in many cases, what you provide is really the only viable option for getting these patients somewhere safe?
Yeah, certainly. With airlines, we see that they tend to stay away from transporting those patients. It disrupts their business model. So there's more and more need for individual ambulance flights, and these you can best do with business jets, certainly. Because you need to fly to smaller airports. You need long-range aircraft which are able to cover long-range missions. Highest flexibility, 1 stretcher, 2 stretcher, up to 6 stretcher. This is, can only be done with business jets.
Interesting. And Milena, you used to work with charter operators carrying passengers in non-medical situations. Is it true to say that it takes a particular type of operator to do this work, that maybe not every company you've worked with in the past would be suitable for this specialist work?
That's definitely for sure, because moving passengers is a complete different area to work in. Moving patients has another meaning, and you do require the support of the pilots and the medical crew. So you have a whole team you need to rely on and actually work on site for us and do the best out of this movement.
That's really interesting. Now, we've had quite a few questions come in on Slido, but do we have any questions from the audience that might involve me having to throw the rugby ball and risking injury and creating some emergency situation here? We'll happily take your questions. You don't have to have the rugby ball thrown at you. We can get a mic to you instead. I'm not seeing any questions, so we'll go back to the Slido. Everybody wants to know, can you think of what's the most difficult sort of challenging operation that you've ever done? Or the one that maybe was the most emotional in a way and you thought, well, I feel good about my job today?
Well, certainly always when it relates down to children, infants and premature babies.
Yes.
Whenever we have to set up the incubator and bring the babies home, this is something which is really important for us.
Of course. Do you have a sense of pride when you manage to complete these missions? They must be very special, I should think.
Yeah, absolutely. But we are not the ones in the front. No one actually ever noticed that we have been part of this whole movement. But yes, I am very proud of multiple movements we have done, which couldn't have been like this without our team.
Yeah, good point. And somebody else asked, can you think of the most difficult operation you've ever had to do? I mean, it would seem obvious to say getting somebody back from Gaza or Ukraine would be difficult, but maybe there are difficulties in other ways where, the circumstances of the patient were so difficult. Can you think of situations where you thought, wow, that was a hard one?
Yeah, actually, I was multiple nights awake trying to organize difficult flights, and yes, moving kids is always very touching for me, at least having two kids of my own. So yes, and we've been to regions where it's been extremely difficult to get into, and we've been welcomed with guns as well at some points, but we managed to have a safe travel at the end.
Do you go on some of the flights yourself? Or
No, unfortunately not.
But you're at home worrying and...
Yeah, I'm on the phone now.
Absolutely. Oliver, can you think of any operations where you thought, wow, that was really exceptional?
Yeah, we were on our way down to the Canaries and destined to bring back 3 patients, so it was pretty well loaded, the aircraft. Then we got a call that there was a terrible car accident in Tenerife, which is the next island.
Wow.
And we immediately, after we picked up those 3 patients which were scheduled, we flew to Tenerife, picked up the 2 patients as well. Luckily, we had the big aircraft, the Dornier, and we could bring all 5 of them home in one go. That was
wow. That's
very important for the...
definitely only in a business aircraft.
Patients in the car accident.
Yeah, okay, that's fantastic. Well, thank you very much. You've really opened our eyes. You've given us a very clear picture of the very special job that you both do. And thank you for explaining that so well to us. Please thank our guests, Milena and Oliver.
Thank you very much.